I'm very lucky to be joined by Jorg Neumann, who's the head of Microsoft Flight Simulator, to talk all things about the game, but also something really exciting. I call it the Australia update. I guess the formal name is the World Update 7. A little less cool if you're an Australian person talking about the game itself. But anyway, Jorg, congrats on the PC release, on the console release, on the introduction of air races, on almost Top Gun, and everything Flight Simulator. It's like a crazy technological accomplishment. And I'm curious, I guess, what you think your proudest accomplishment in Flight Sim is to date, and I guess conversely, what you think didn't quite go as well as you'd planned.
So first off, pleasure to meet you. Very excited to be here, and I actually call it the Australia update. The World Update 7 thing is just a label so the world can sort of keep track of stuff. But yeah, it's been the Australia update. We've been working on this for well over a year, so I'm so excited to talk to Australians, about Australia update. Yay, finally. But to your question, I mean, it's been an awesome ride, right? Like since August 2020 when we launched. I mean, hands down, when we started, we said, what are we doing and who do we make this for? And we said, it's for core simmers. And that is my proudest accomplishment. If I have to single out one thing, I would say, I think the core simmers were maybe a little bit skeptical because we had been gone for a while. Microsoft hadn't done anything since Flight Sim 10. And so that's been like over a decade. And then you wonder, like, do these people get us? Do they take this seriously and all that? And I think we, hopefully over the last 18 months since launch, proven that we really mean it. We really want to make simmers happy. And I can say, we just looked at numbers, like we have now twice as many people playing as we had last summer. So it's awesome. It's really awesome to see that, because it means the simmers found a home for the hobby, and there's new people that came in and really enjoy it. And that was always I don't know if you're a pilot or not, but when you talk to pilots in the real world, they oftentimes tell you, like about 50% of them tell us anyways, that they fell in love with aviation through Microsoft Flight Simulator. And I don't know if you could see my camera, but this year is 40 years. It's 40 years of Microsoft Flight Simulator. So it has really been part of the aviation industry, and it really means something to pilots. And there's a pilot crisis on the planet, right? It's not that talked about that much, but there's oftentimes people say between 500 and 700,000 pilots missing. And I got all these calls from airplane manufacturers, and they're like, hey, you've got to help us, games are super popular, you're doing a great job. We need to find new aviators and people to fall in love with aviation. And I think that's the single kernel that I think we're achieving, because I get emails from like parents or kids are like 7 years old, and they say, oh my God, I've been flying and it's awesome. And you can just see sort of the seed of falling in love. And that's really what we're all about, right? Really.
Yeah.
So that's the top thing. What's the least accomplished thing? What do I think about that? I think it was interesting when we launched, we had sort of made a decision. So I don't know if everybody knows this, but there's a community of creators, right? Flight Sim is very much a platform. So there's hundreds of companies that make things for Flight Sim, be it airplanes, airports, missions, tools, all kinds of cool things. and we were very deliberate when we launched and said, we're not going to make a study level airliner. Because if we do that, we are undermining the third-party creator ecosystem. So we did something we thought was pretty good, sort of entry level, not too complex. But the simmers really want something complex. That's the deeper you get into it, the more you want. And so we didn't quite put that in the box. And we thought third parties would basically be able to jump into that gap quite quickly. It took them a little bit longer. There were a couple of good ones last year that I would highlight. The CRJ from Aerosoft's really cool plane, sort of a regional jet. But there are the big Boeing and Airbus airliner experience, super deep system, everything really simulated, hasn't really happened yet from third parties. And we're looking at that. There's many third parties that are working on it, and some of them are getting quite close. But if I had to do it again, I'd probably stick a study level airliner into the base. So it's something we learned, maybe for the future.
Nice. And bonus points for being not like, like we're just too good. I guess our problem is that we're just too good for our own. Oh no, I like that you're able to critique. I want to get into like my personal experience with Flight Sim, which is probably a lot of people's experience. But first, I just want to touch on, you said in terms of player numbers doubling, is that because of console, or is that kind of bolstered by console, or is it more? Is there still more of an emphasis on the PC experience, or more
It's
players
good.
on PC?
So I would say it's a little both. So console certainly helped. Like the top numbers of, I mean, I always say that the highest number of any flight sim ever, it was probably when we launched on Xbox, because that moment it really peaked. But what's really interesting is how well this sustained itself. So there are more people now on PC, hundreds of thousands more simmers. It's very obvious because we see that in the player data. And then there's an influx, a constant influx of Xbox players, and and I think that what's also nice is they're happy with each other, right? They're sort of like, well, the PC people like the Xbox people when they meet online, everything's fine. Actually, the PC players help the Xbox players really get used to simming. So yeah, it's both. I would say that's how we double, really. The PC base is quite a bit bigger than it was, and then Xbox is just on top of it and keeps pushing in. So I think it's actually going to keep growing throughout the year. I'm quite excited to watch that and we focus on it, because that means people are happy.
Excellent. And you were saying, I'm a wannabe pilot, to answer your question. I dabble. I'm not very good. And we'll get into what I do in a second. But I would think something like the Air Race update was a way of kind of giving a little bit of structure and direction to players who, they've flown past their house, they've flown past their friend's house, they've, maybe done like Melbourne to Sydney or something if we're talking Australia. It was that intentional to kind of give some of that direction to players who aren't, the hardcore simmers? Is there plans to continue adding to that side of things? Or is it more like, is this really for simmers doing their own thing?
I think it's attractive to both. Like the thing that actually all came from something called Acceleration Pack, which I don't know if you know what that is, but it was the FSX had one big expansion. It was called Acceleration, and it did three things. It added the Reno Air Race, it added Red Bull Air Race, it had a helicopter, and it added some missions. And so spiritually, I felt very much like this is in our DNA. People loved that back in 2007 when it came out. And so then we looked at it, and I actually looked at all three things. And as I met the people from Reno, and there's some of the world's most famous pilots and some of the world's most famous planes, it kind of became obvious we have to go much deeper than what FSX had done. So we ended up modeling 40 planes. We went with scanners and met all these people wherever the planes were parked, and we talked to everybody involved, and they really embraced it. So we ended up spending, I don't know, a year and a half or something just on the Reno update. And I think it looks like an arcade mode, but it's completely not. It's actually, and it's funny because over the Christmas holidays, people like flyers who race at Reno wrote me and said, Jorg, this is exactly like it is in the real world. As a matter of fact, I just bought a jet and I'm going to train in Microsoft Flight Simulator before I fly out to Reno because it's so accurate. So that is literally what it is. And it's great, right? This is the best validation we could have possibly hoped for, that the people who are actually flying are saying it's the same. And about your question about structure, I think it's something we talk about a lot. It is a sandbox. The world's a sandbox. Our world's a sandbox. And simmers, I always say, they bring their shovels. They know exactly what to do in the sandbox. They bring their shovels. They have their little toy cars, whatever they want to do. And then some people come to the sandbox and they just sort of sit there and are like, okay, what am I doing with all this sand? So there is an element where we need to put some structure in, and we want to keep doing that. It's interesting in that a bunch of the third parties actually make these types of things. There are missions. I know Orbex made a race. I think it was somewhere in downtown Sydney. I think they flew. It was Sydney or Adelaide or something like that. And people are having fun with it, right? So there is an increasing number of missions, and it's fun to see how people are getting creative. And what we do, because we're thinking about ourselves very much as a platform, is better tools. People want to make more missions. Okay, well, we need to make better tools in the mission editor. That's what we need to do, so people can unleash their creativity. It's an open ecosystem, So I think about it that way. Like we're going to do stuff, and we'll talk about it over time, that we're going to make more and more things a little bit more structured. And it needs to be authentic, right? The last thing we want to be is a game. We're really not. And you'll see that almost immediately when you jump in. Might look gamey, but it's a sim. You can go deep or not deep. You can get assistances or not, but it is not faking the physics or anything like that. This is real physics, and you need to go learn how a plane flies or get assistances going, right? So yeah, maybe that's the answer.
And even with VR, and I hope I'm not putting my foot in my mouth, but you've discussed the sandbox without saying metaverse, and I'm very happy that you didn't say that phrase because I'm just really sick of hearing metaverse. But anyway, I digress. I turn all the assists on. I will take off in a giant jumbo jet that I have no idea what I'm doing with, and I will fly over Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, which is my hometown. I've been in Australia for like 20 years, and obviously the pandemic's hitting us harder in a different way now than it was at the start when Flight Sim came out. And, any time in between, depending on the day, who knows what was going on. But it was a really good way for me to fly over my house and like look at the South Saskatchewan River and see all these fancy things. And my sister teaches in a small town and had moved since I'd seen her last, so I could fly over the small town of Mervyn, Saskatchewan, and take screenshots, and she could tell me where her house was. And that was just like a really refreshing, lovely kind of break from literally just existing in this room that you see. And it's not just like a white wall behind me and there's like things in here. I'm not like locked in here by any means, but it was like a nice way to escape. Can you speak to some of the serendipitousness of like the release of Flight Sim at that time of the pandemic? And like, can you single out your favoriteest feel good story kind of tied into that somehow?
Oh,
there's too
so
many.
Stories. I love those stories. Like, I mean, I know that people propose to each other in Flight Sim. That's a beautiful thing, As a matter of fact, in our own team, somebody did that, and then it's just those are great. I used to tell that story. I was like you. I was a little lonely. Like, what the heck? Like the world's shut off from me, and I missed my parents. They're getting on a little bit. My dad's in his 90s, and I was like, gosh, I mean, hopefully this ends soon so I can visit. But so at some point I was so homesick that I just flew over to Germany and visited my parents. I literally flew the plane right next to my parents' house, and sort of sat there, called them up on the phone, and said, "Hey, I'm so sorry we can't see each other in person, but I am there in spirit. I'm sitting right next to you. I'm looking at our house. I see because it's real time. I saw the time of day. The sun was kind of starting to set. I'm like, I'm with you guys." And that meant something for me. I always get teary-eyed when I say that story, but I heard quite a few of those. So it means we touched something. We connected people, which is totally unexpected. It's a unexpected and a beautiful thing. But yeah, I think maybe that's it. That's all I have.
In the best of ways, I did exactly the same thing with time of day, and then I was mucking around with the temperature. Like it's different hemispheres, so it's like 36 degrees here and it's minus 36 back in Canada, and I was turning on the snow, and like I had to go back home actually the last couple weeks ago for some reasons that we won't get into, but it's a lot nicer to see snow on a computer screen as opposed to not being used to minus 36 and like forgetting how cold that actually is. So it's a nice comfortable way to go and get all the feels, which is great. The next thing I would do, like when I very first started playing Flight Sim, or this iteration anyway, is I went to Sydney because you got to go look at the Opera House, you got to go check out things in Melbourne as well, and I'm hoping with the Opera House and the Harbour Bridge, maybe you have some news for me as it comes to.
I got a video. Watch the video. I have a trailer.
Yes, of course.
Okay, all right. I will fire it up. I think you will be pleased. You see here, fumbling with Teams.
You're not supposed to make me tear up in an interview. That's just weird.
I hope we did your country.
I did a little bit. Melbourne boy through and through, I gotta say, but Sydney looks really good. Sydney's a good place to visit, but not a good place to live, in my opinion. That's fantastic. There's so many things. I'm imagining the PR people just told you to make sure you could get as many flyers over all the cricket grounds as humanly possible, or
no, nothing to do with it. No. I mean, it's so much fun, right? When you dive into a country and you research. So we researched for a year. We ended up I very quickly realized I need to get some local knowledge. So I partnered up with a team. They're called Orbex, and they are actually in Melbourne, and they know they're all Australians. So we got into so from our side we can bring things like new satellite images and new aerials, and the cities that you saw. We have 11, which is unprecedentedly many for a world update. Right, we have like Adelaide, Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Perth, Hobart, Cairns, Darwin, Townsville, Bunbury, and Mackay. So it's a ton. Yeah. Great. then I talked to the Geoscience AU. I don't know if you know those guys, but it's a geographical institute in Australia. They had 3 terabytes of data for us, all the height data, and everybody contributes, right? It really is just like you can feel the team coming together. And then with Orbex, we sort of carefully picked like what are the right airports to make, which airports mean something, not just like pump out some airports, like actually airports that mean something. And then we pick the POIs, the famous places, and that's sort of an iterative process. We look for things that sort of stand out, right? For cricket stadiums, football stadiums, those types of things, observatories, larger structures, but then what's really fun is when you get into sort of the nuances, like somewhere, and I can't remember the name. There's a hut somewhere. It clearly is important to people. It's somewhere near Perth, a hut in the middle of nowhere. And I'm like, okay, well, we got to make that. And then I sent this over to some people on the Microsoft Australia side. They contribute. They're like, they got to do the banana. And what about Luna Park? And this and that. I'm like, okay, I'm making a banana. Cool. And I think it really brings the thing to life. And then we make missions, right? We make these discovery flights, which just sort of let you hang out over a city, and then bush trips to really show you the cool places. And we spent a bunch of time on the Great Barrier Reef, by the way. That needed to be good.
Yeah.
Because in the original release, there was literally just blue ocean. You couldn't see anything. And it's clearly important. So we spent a good amount of time trying to get that right.
Nice. And I was going to talk about Orbix, but it seems like, you're not having to worry about how you deal with, they did the Cityscape Sydney pack a while ago to flesh out Sydney. Obviously, you don't need to worry about how you're stepping on their toes because they're involved in this. So
no, they help us all the time. They help us with airports. I have another video. Do you want to see another video?
I don't know if we have time. I want to, but can I watch it later? I just don't want to waste my time talking to you, if that's cool.
The most famous plane in Australia? What? Okay.
Is it it's a Qantas plane? Or no? Can it be?
It's a classic. It's a classic plane. I'll show you. It's short.
Okay.
Short.
Okay.
There we go. Voila. So we always look for like what is sort of in the biggest accomplishments in aviation of a particular region. So we researched and we found this.
Okay, that's pretty important.
And so we basically did a whole bunch of research on the Southern Cross. Here it is. Just for time. So this is basically the flight of the Southern Cross, actually from Auckland all the way to Brisbane, with all the right steps. It's 85 hours. So we created it in the sim with all the exactly right weather, and everything is completely accurate. So if you're so inclined to go on Smithy's footsteps, then you can do that.
Well, I feel dumb for asking if it was a Qantas plane now, to be honest. But
well, we're celebrating the history.
That's cool.
Anyways, almost there. So you actually fly through the weather and you see the storms and stuff, and it's quite something. And the community has been asking for it. They're like, man, we want to fly the big accomplishment trip, so you can.
Nice.
And at the very end.
And decidedly Australian as well, of course, which is very fitting for World Update 7. For 83 hours.
Thank you, Smithy. It's unbelievable when you think about it. In those machines in the 1920s, my God. Those were real heroes.
I spent like 30 hours getting back to Canada. 30 hours in a seat in economy going to Canada, and I thought that was like a slog. Like 83 hours? Okay.
The thing is open on the sides. It's not like an enclosed cockpit.
Well ventilated, at least, I suppose, is the good thing. I just quickly want to touch upon the towering monolith that used to be in Melbourne. Was there any chance that was ever going to somehow make the cut and remain in, even if there isn't a 212-story building in the game? Was there ever talk about, that's just too funny to cut? Probably not.
I don't know. Like, so we are on this trip of like, let's be authentic and accurate. And it was funny and delightful. And I mean, what do simmers do? They try to land on top of the 200 and some story building when we didn't have gliders, so they try to land like a Cessna. But yeah, we had some. I don't know if you saw it. We had this gigantic abyss in Brazil. It went down to the center of the earth, so you could, you know. I mean, I think what's nice is you can do mods like this. You know, I remember the ship that blocked the Suez Canal that somebody put in. It's like that was great. We all loved it. Even Satya, our CEO, was talking about it. He's like, "Oh my God, look at Flight Sim! It does everything in real time." We're like, "Yeah." So I think we'll have fun with it. I was seriously considering doing I don't know if you have that in Australia, this monolith that is floating around the Earth, that people take pictures of some strange monolith.
Of
I was
course.
seriously thinking about, should we put a monolith in and just teleport it around just to go and join the fun? Never did it, but maybe something for the future.
Orbix can get on it or someone. I know I'm out of time pretty much, so I just wanted to quickly see if we could touch upon the xCloud release and if there's any news coming, you know, in terms of release date or even, you know, talking about. I'm imagining because you're kind of streaming into the game to begin with, having to stream that out to a console or a browser is that the biggest hurdle, or am I completely devoid of any technical
It's actually
knowledge?
easier because it's easier because we're streaming the world, right? I mean, the most of what you see is not on your machine on a hard drive or something like this. So we are already very much stream aware, which is, I think, I don't know much about other games and what they run into, but for us it was actually pretty damn straightforward. It was a joyful experience to work with a team. That xCloud team was doing really cool stuff and very collaborative. And it was you'll see it pretty soon. Can't give you a date or I will be shot.
Fair enough.
But it's coming and it's very cool. And it changes things. We should talk again. It changes things in unexpected ways.
Nice. I would love that.
Like, for example, downloading a build doesn't take time. Interesting, you know, because it's a big product, right? It's like 140 gig now or something. Yeah,
Cool.
that's not really there anymore. So that changes stuff. Actually, in our day-to-day developer life, it actually just changes stuff.
Thank you for reducing my footprint on my PC as it is, though. Just we won't talk about that. We don't have any time. I want to finish up with just like a very selfish request. If you're taking, you know, potential points of interest for the future, there is a giant turtle named Ernie, made out of concrete, gets painted once every couple years in the small town of Turtleford, Saskatchewan. He is an icon to the people around. So if I get to submit a POI that you could maybe look at adding in, that's what I would add in. Ernie the giant turtle in Turtleford, Saskatchewan. I know that's probably far down the list as compared to others, but at least, you know, it's been submitted now.
We wanted to delight people. If that, I need to write down Happy Turtle.
All right.
I'll look it on Google.
I'll send you some reference materials if you'd like. Jorg, thank you so much for your time. I honestly appreciate talking to you and all the like awesome, like just fun frivolity that Microsoft Flight Sim has given to us all, and now, you know, a chance to jump back in and get all teary-eyed looking at Western Australia because they won't let us inside the state right now. So it's a way to get back in.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for your time.
I had a great time flying in Australia, by the way. It's beautiful, beautiful place.
Nice.
Huge.
Very huge. Very hot right now. So slip, slap, slop, and there's other S's now that I don't even know. But Jorg, thank you again so much for your time. Very much appreciated. The World Update comes out on my birthday, so what better birthday present could you have unknowingly have given me? So thank you again for that.
Thank you. I hope to talk to you soon.
Likewise. Thanks so much.